of Flowers, a Percabeth fanfiction, Chapter 2. She's so freaking mad at him. Not that it's a surprise, but the point still stands. She's so darn angry that it's making him angry. He's not totally sure why they're fighting, if he is really being honest. It kind of feels like she's just picking a fight with him every single time he takes a step or opens his mouth. Sure, they've always been the type to bicker and snip at each other, but it's never been like this before. Just earlier this week, she seemed furious at him for just existing, and it's frustrating, really. Percy had left his cabin, and somehow Annabeth was already cross with him. Upon seeing him, she glares harshly and all but stomped into the other direction. He knows that she's angry about Luke or whatever, but it's all so ridiculous. It's not his fault that Luke has decided to deflect to the Titan side, and it's not his fault that Annabeth can't wrap her head around it. It's been a massive Cold War for months, and every other camper knows about it. Everyone knows to avoid Annabeth at dueling practice after running into him, and everyone runs for the hills when Percy comes slashing in. It's been tough, to say the least, to be fighting with someone who's supposed to be his best friend, to be fighting this irrational battle with the person that's supposed to be the most logical. What's so hard to understand? Percy doesn't get it. Luke is evil, and Annabeth won't listen. God, you're being so naive, Percy shouts at Annabeth. How dare you call me that? I'm not being naive. I'm being thorough. You're being an idiot, and you won't admit it. The look she gives him is pure flames, and she looks ready to tear him to pieces with her bare hands. Annabeth crosses her arms over her chest. You don't know anything. You don't understand how complicated it is. Literally, how is this complicated? I'm just trying to save the world, or whatever everyone else wants me to do. And who says Luke isn't trying to do the same, deep at his core? Okay, literally him. Percy dodges the wooden block stool. Annabeth launches at his head. You're so crazy. Stop trying to murder me, he shouts, and Annabeth just throws another hunk of wood. Go away. I'm not dealing with you. Run back to Rachel or whatever. You're making it sound like I'm the problem, but I'm not the one chucking wood into the air. Go away. Percy huffs an annoyed sigh and heads towards the river. He's tired from the day, training for battles, a long game of capture the flag, and this god-awful Annabeth situation. He reaches his hand out and touches it into the water, letting the cool feeling wash over him and refresh everything in him. For a moment, things feel calm. Things feel a bit more normal. Well, his version of normal at least. Not for the first time. Percy wishes his definition of normal is a bit more, well, normal. Maybe in another lifetime, in another universe, he isn't fighting with his friend over a demigod being an evil vessel for a Titan. It's crazy when he says it out loud, but he can admit that much. He wishes that in the other lifetime, they aren't having a life or death issue, but they're arguing over who's calling first or whose house they'll be hanging out at. Maybe they'd be normal kids in high school, where they'd just glare at each other in class for choosing someone else as their lab partner, or something stupid like that, something ridiculous and mundane like that. Instead, he has to grapple with his normal. The fact that maybe he has to say goodbye angry. And honestly, Percy doesn't like to be angry. He doesn't like the extremity of that emotion. He doesn't like that the condension and more. He doesn't like that connotation more than anything. He doesn't like being an angry man. Even if he is just 15 years old right now, he's seen the damage an angry man can do, can make. He's felt it too. Percy hears a rustling to his right, and he immediately whips around, his hand on his weapon and the other ready to call upon the water for his defense if needed. He's tired. If he has to fight a monster, he'll make it a quick battle. His eyes hone on to the movement. There's another movement, and out comes Annabeth's braids and her orange shirt, contrasted against her skin. His nerves go down, but his defenses shoot straight up. In a flash, she notices him, and though her gaze is tired, it also hardens within seconds. They stare at each other for a moment. Neither one is moving. Whether it's out of shock or spite. Percy swallows. Good strategy today, he says, extending a peace treaty. An olive branch. An offering. To be civil for this short fleeting beat. He sees Annabeth calculate in her head what her next move should be, and it ends up being to just let her defenses down. Her position slumps, and the weariness appears in her eyes again. Percy appreciates that she's not hiding it from it anymore. Thanks. She replies before motioning to the spot next to him. May I? He nods. She takes a seat. It's quiet, awkwardly so, but it's a vast improvement. You seem a bit worn out, Percy notes. Says you. Annabeth bites back, and she just barely smiles, still looking at the rushing water in the river. Hey, it was a tough one today, trying to pull that off, Percy says, putting his hands up in surrender. Annabeth has a wider smile this time. Oh, stop it. That was no big deal to you. Again, there's an awkward pause, but it's also nice. It's nice just to sit here, even if Annabeth is sitting nearly a foot away from him and is as silent as a mouse. He misses the times she rambles about architecture history, and he'd feel his brain melting. Remember that hike we took when we were 13? Annabeth says, surprising Percy. Which one? The one where you got stuck in that rock wall. Percy groans, putting his face in his hands as Annabeth laughs. Yeah, I do. That's the last time you and Grover can dare me into doing something. If you two agree I should do it, then I'm definitely getting the short end of the stick. You got your shoelaces caught on a stick, too. Not the point. He's grinning now. So is she. It feels like they're in a little bubble. Like the fights don't exist in this small little 4-foot radius and they're just two kids teasing each other. This is his normal. Percy just knows it. It feels right. Even with the godly powers, the monsters, the crazy prophecies, this is the thing that makes it worth it. A genuine connection that, at least for a few minutes, can transcend any turmoil. He's never been normal, and he can't be. But his friendship with Annabeth makes him feel like that's okay. Lets him know that he doesn't have to be normal. He can be the most unheard of demigod in the history of demigods, but it doesn't matter. We should go on a hike again. See how far you can get through the wall again. She laughs. No way. We are not making it a yearly thing. That is so crazy. No, but it would be funny. Okay, when you put it like that. They laugh together for the first time in what feels like decades. He grabs a stick near him and begins to stab it into the water. What are you doing? I honestly have no idea, Percy replies. He's watching as the water pushes against the stick. The ripples completely entrance him, and for a second he thinks of his mother. How she's always looked at bodies of waters like she used to know it. Granted, that is partially true. You were so odd, Annabeth says with a chuckle, shaking her head. She suddenly points to something floating in the river. Hey, what's that? Percy leans in closer, seeing the brightly colored, thing floating down for God knows what reason. I don't know, just let me... He stands up and reaches into the water, reaching for it and snatches it right up. He shakes the water off of the flower. Who puts freaking flowers into the river? It's wrapped in a soggy paper that he has to peel away. The petals look a bit damaged, but not too many have been lost. It's a roughened up flower, but it's a flower nonetheless. You want it? He asked, looking at Annabeth, who was now standing next to him, peering at the flower with interest. She's struck by how she seems smaller than he last remembered. They used to be nose to nose, but now that's changed. Annabeth scoffs. Why would I want it? Percy shrugs. Hey, I'm just asking, he says defensively. Annabeth shakes her head, but her eyes don't leave the flower. It's definitely not a premium flower anymore. Maybe it once was, but now it's definitely been through battles other flowers have never seen. Percy shoves the flowers into Annabeth's hands, who makes a surprised sound. I think you should take it, he says as she scowls at him. Do I look like a child of Demeter? She growls. Percy smells. Nah, but you look like you could use a flower anyway. Annabeth doesn't say anything, but she also doesn't chuck the flower back into the river, so he takes it as a win. He figures that she's not much the flower type of girl, but her tired eyes seem to shine, and he thinks that she likes the tough little chrysanthemum well enough.